And thanks for staying with Morning Live. Now, signal distribution company Sentech says it's pushing forward to meet the fourth industrial revolution with its new broadband offering. Now, Sentech Connect, that's what it's going to be called, and its aim is to service government and poor communities with fast internet access. So to tell us more about this, I'm joined by Sentech CEO Mlamli Booi. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
So, Sentech Connect. Before we get into what exactly you plan to do there, you've been down this road before with broadband. So you're going to try it again? What's going to be different?
Well, the strategy is different this time around. Our focus is a business-to-business focus, and that business being government-owned buildings or government-owned departments, and also connecting communities out there, that is clinics and schools. And we have a package that we really have put together, which is looking at e-learning, where you can enable the students in schools and rural areas to be able to have access to internet so that they can have the same opportunity as we have in the urban areas. And the second one being the access to e-health, where you can link clinics which are remote to a tertiary hospital, so that you are able to assist the nurses in the clinics by using the specialist in a bigger hospital to assist them in diagnosing whatever is happening within the patient in a rural environment. And the third point about our offering is putting together an infrastructure and network which will help the Internet of Things connectivity, and we've been speaking about smart cities, and we'd like to talk about smart villages. And we're doing some trials of smart villages in the Northwest this financial year and next financial year. So the package deal really is for us to say we want to close the access gaps, because there's a big deal about access to internet and how it impacts the communities and how it impacts the economy in those areas which have not been given access to internet. So we are saying currently, in our view, there's been a bit of a market failure in terms of giving access to broadband to the underserved areas. And this is where we come in. We're not saying we're there to replace the big private sector and so on and so forth. We're a state-owned company, and we believe that as a state-owned company, we have a responsibility to come in when there is a market failure and intervene so that we can have broadband access to all. Our minister speaks about access to internet for all. The fourth industrial revolution and connectivity is very key to implementation of any technology in the 4R space. And this is what we're driving as a company, and this is what our ministry is driving through Minister Stella and Abrams, and this is what government is driving through the presidency with the establishment of the 4IR Commission. So we're saying let us enable all communities to have access to fast broadband internet access, so that we can all be able to enjoy this beauty of content and educational information and entertainment information, whether using broadband or whether using wireless, which is the big area that we're operating in, or whether using satellite.
And then it sounds great. The intention is noble, but you touched on the issue of infrastructure. Do you have the requisite infrastructure? How much of a capital layout will you need? And as a state-owned entity, do you have access to the sort of funding you will need?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what is important to note is that not every business has got access to all the capital they will require to roll out any infrastructure. And we're not unique in that sense, because our capability as a state-owned company, we have got a good balance sheet, and we are able to go out into the market and raise funding. We have a reputation of having 7 years of clean audit as an institution. So our financial standing is going to enable us to roll out this infrastructure. But we're going to take it one step at a time. And we're starting with the districts, as it is the strategy of the presidency, to say let's have an entry point at districts, and then we roll it out from each and every district to the province and so on and so forth. So do we have access to capital? I think the appetite is there from the financial institutions to lend to any entity who may want to borrow funds. But obviously, we're a PFMA company. There are rules that we must play by.
And in that regard, one of the most critical factors will, of course, be cost. What will it cost, and will it be better than what consumers currently are exposed to? I'm sure you're aware of the Competition Commission ruling this week.
Yes. Yeah. I think, as I said, we're not looking at mobile data. We're looking at fixed wireless data, so which means would connect a clinic and create a Wi-Fi hotspot around that clinic to enable communities to have initially a free Wi-Fi access, and then we can tier the offering so that if you want to be watching movies, then you must pay for that. From a costing point of view, we are developing a costing model that will enable all people to have access to data at a reasonable price.
What is
I
reasonable?
can't tell you the price now. I think we will have to respond to what the market demand is. But the main point for us is that we have to create data speeds between 10 megabits per second and 100 megabits per second, so that when you are in that area, you don't feel like you are discriminated on the basis of your location.
But I have to push you a little bit,
yeah.
because, as I said, you are aware of the Competition Commission ruling this week and the excessive cost of data in South Africa. So when you're putting together this plan, surely, Mr. Booi, you were doing some number crunching. So can't you just let us in terms of what sort of price range we're looking at?
Can't give you the price. It will be market related or better than market. That's what I can say. Because our aim is to provide access as a state-owned company, and profit margins that we're targeting are below the profit margins targeted by private sector, because our role is to make sure that there is universal access for all.
Also in terms of, the actual cost of spectrum licensing, is that a factor that, you are concerned with at all?
It is a big factor to the rollout of any wireless infrastructure. And I think for us, we are watching it quite carefully. We will be participating in the space of acquisition of spectrum. So I think the more expensive the spectrum is from an acquisition point of view, that will impact the price of the service offering. So our hope is that at the time of licensing, we'll be able to access the spectrum that will not drive our cost of usage to the consumer too high.
And what is Sentech's role, more broadly speaking, in this regard when it comes to spectrum?
Well, our role is we occupy the broadcast spectrum as a company that was previously mandated to be the signal distributor. So every television program in the country is carried by Sentech on the terrestrial spectrum. So our role then is to free up that spectrum, that's where we participate in, and vacate the spectrum so that we can be able to allow the regulator to license and give that spectrum to those who have been licensed for spectrum. But we have rolled out the infrastructure terrestrially. It is ready for usage. It is being used currently for those who have got access to set-top boxes. The process of rolling out set-top boxes is underway. And I think what we need to do, especially free-to-airs, we need to promote the digital terrestrial transmission services so that we can have the uptake, so that people can go out there and buy their own set-top boxes, those who are not going to be subsidized by government. So there's got to be a drive.
But that program has been lagging behind for the longest time.
Granted, but we're picking up speed. I think that is our role now. There is a program that is in the ministry which is called a digital migration program that is aimed at driving the pace better than...
But it's been there. We have to migrate. It's been there. But what is the hold-up at this point?
I think the big hold-up is for you to migrate and switch off analog, you have to have receivers on the field. So if consumers don't have receivers on the field, it's going to be difficult for government to say switch off, because then it means SABC and all the other free-to-airs don't have access to
But this is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the issuing of tenders in this regard. I think at some point an amount of 10 billion rand was paid for set-top box distribution. What is going on? Where exactly are we getting stuck with this migration process?
Because it is not the role of Sentech to work on the set-top boxes project, and we have not been part of the set-top box distribution process. So where it is stuck, I think the project, the PMO that deals with set-top boxes can give a better insight on how we're going to unlock these challenges. But I think from our perspective as an operator, we need to ensure that we participate and help where we can help to roll out those set-top boxes into the field so that consumers have got the access they require to the set-top boxes. Where it is stuck, I think there is a funding issue as well. This is what the government is battling with, to fund those set-top boxes. We need to unlock those hurdles so that we are able to provide, especially for the subsidized market. If we don't provide access for the subsidized market, it's going to take a while for us to switch off the analog spectrum and free up that spectrum to give the licensed spectrum to the mobile operators. So I think it would be good if you have a discussion with the PMO that deals with this, so that at least they can give a better picture and also paint a picture of how are we going to move forward and how have we unlocked these hurdles moving forward. But we keep participating in that space as Sentech because it is our role to enable consumer, to enable the state to do its work.
So just finally, Sentech Connect, when can people expect to connect?
It is a phased approach. We're starting at district level. And again, I want to emphasize that this is like a business-to-business access. So clinics, schools, government departments. We currently are participating in a government program which is called SA Connect. So there are schools and clinics which have already been connected by us, but this is not our project, but we participate in connecting schools on a different project that is a government program. When can you expect to have connectivity? In the next financial year, we are beginning to do our rollout in the districts, Eastern Cape districts, KZN and Limpopo, because those are the districts which the president has said, let us begin these districts and roll out from there. So from now on, yes, you can have access to this in the SA Connect program, but in the next financial year, you'll begin to have access to what we are rolling out. The time frame for rolling out to cover the whole country is going to be a long process. We can give a definitive end deadline now to say by such and such a year we must have covered the whole country. But we need to be aware that there is more than 40,000 points that need to be connected nationally, especially schools and clinics, and then government buildings. And our role is to ensure that those get connected as soon as possible.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. And that was, of course, the CEO of Sentech, Mlamli Booi. And it brings us up to news time with Leanne.